Romania's participation in World War II included a significant naval dimension that played out primarily in the Black Sea, where Romanian naval forces conducted operations from June 1941 until the country's dramatic switch to the Allied side in August 1944. The Romanian Navy, known as the Forțele Navale Regale Române, or Royal Romanian Navy, was a modest force reflecting Romania's limited Black Sea coastline, constrained naval budget, and the strategic realities of operating in an enclosed sea dominated by the Soviet Black Sea Fleet. When Romania joined Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union on June 22, 1941, the Romanian Navy faced the formidable task of challenging Soviet naval superiority in the Black Sea while protecting Romania's vital ports, supporting ground operations along the coast, and maintaining sea lines of communication. The Romanian fleet consisted of a handful of destroyers, submarines, torpedo boats, motor torpedo boats, mine layers, minesweepers, and various auxiliary vessels, creating a force that was small by major power standards, but represented significant capability for a nation of Romania's size and resources. The story of Romanian warships during World War II reveals how a secondary naval power operated under constant threat from a superior enemy fleet, how Romanian sailors conducted mine warfare that shaped Black Sea operations, how coastal defense and convoy escort missions protected vital interests, and how the switch of sides in August 1944 transformed former enemies into allies overnight. From the modern destroyers that formed the fleet's striking power to the submarines that conducted dangerous patrols in Soviet-controlled waters, from motor torpedo boats that raided enemy shipping to the auxiliaries that maintained operations, Romanian ships participated in a naval war that was intense, dangerous, and ultimately tragic for many vessels and their crews. This comprehensive examination explores every ship and vessel type that served under the Romanian flag during World War II, revealing their origins, capabilities, operations, and fates in one of the war's lesser-known but strategically important naval theaters. The two ships of the Regi Ferdinand class, Regi Ferdinand and Regina Maria, represented the most powerful warships in the Romanian Navy and served as flagships throughout World War II. These destroyers had fascinating origins, having been laid down in Italy as the Aquila and Falco respectively, part of a class of destroyers being built for Portugal. Financial difficulties led Portugal to cancel the order, and Romania seized the opportunity to acquire modern destroyers, purchasing both incomplete ships in 1927 and 1928. The vessels were completed to Romanian specifications at Italian shipyards and delivered in 1930. Named after Romania's World War I, King Ferdinand I and his consort Queen Marie, these destroyers represented Romania's naval ambitions and provided genuine striking power. The Regi Ferdinand class displaced approximately 1,400 tons standard and 1,800 tons fully loaded, making them medium-sized destroyers by international standards but large ships for Romania's navy. Overall length was approximately 95 meters, with a beam of about 9.5 meters and draft of 3 meters. The sleek hulls and raked bows gave these ships elegant profiles that reflected Italian design aesthetic. Propulsion consisted of two shaft-geared steam turbines fed by 4 Thornycroft boilers, producing a combined 44,000 shaft horsepower. This powerful machinery drove the destroyers to maximum speeds of 36 knots when new, though by World War II, aging machinery and hull fouling reduced this to perhaps 32-33 knots. Range was approximately 1,200 nautical miles at cruising speed, adequate for Black Sea operations. The armament reflected 1920s destroyer design philosophy centered on guns and torpedoes. Main armament consisted of 5 120mm guns in single mounts, 1 forward, 1 aft, and 3 amidships. These dual-purpose weapons could engage both surface targets and aircraft, firing approximately 8 to 10 rounds per minute per gun to ranges of 15 kilometers. The guns were manually aimed using optical directors, a system that worked well against surface targets but struggled against fast-moving aircraft. Secondary armament included 2 70mm anti-aircraft guns and multiple smaller caliber machine guns, typically 13.2mm weapons in twin or quadruple mounts. This anti-aircraft armament proved inadequate against determined air attacks, a weakness that would cost Romanian destroyers dearly. Torpedo armament consisted of 633mm torpedo tubes in 2 triple mounts, providing formidable striking power against enemy warships. These torpedoes could sink or cripple cruisers and threaten even larger vessels. Additionally, the destroyers could carry and deploy mines, typically 40 to 60 mines, giving them mine warfare capability. Depth charge racks at the stern provided anti-submarine capability, though submarines were not major threats in the Black Sea. The crew complement was approximately 150 to 180 officers and men, relatively small by major Navy standards but adequate for these medium-sized ships. When Romania entered World War II, Regal Ferdinand and Regina Maria immediately became centerpieces of naval operations. The destroyers conducted patrols, escorted convoys, supported amphibious operations along the coast, and stood ready to counter Soviet naval sorties. Romanian destroyer crews trained intensively, conducting gunnery exercises, torpedo drills, and damage control practice to maintain readiness. The destroyers participated in the naval bombardment of Odessa during the lengthy siege of that Soviet port in 1941, their 120mm guns providing fire support for Romanian and German ground forces. The ships withstood counter-battery fire from Soviet coastal guns and air attacks from Soviet aircraft, suffering damage but remaining operational. Throughout 1941 and 1942, both destroyers conducted numerous operations, steaming thousands of miles and firing thousands of rounds in support of Axis operations. However, operating in the confined waters of the Black Sea under constant threat from Soviet air power proved deadly. Soviet aircraft conducted numerous attacks on Romanian naval forces, and the destroyers' inadequate anti-aircraft armament left them vulnerable. On July 26, 1941, Regina Maria was attacked by Soviet aircraft while operating off the Crimean coast. Multiple bomb hits struck the destroyer, causing catastrophic damage. The ship broke apart and sank rapidly, taking much of her crew with her. This devastating loss shocked the Romanian Navy and demonstrated the vulnerability of surface warships to air attack. Regal Ferdinand survived the loss of her sister and continued operating throughout 1942 and into 1943, but the constant danger took its toll. The destroyer underwent repairs and refits to improve anti-aircraft armament, with additional machine guns and cannons installed to provide better defense against aircraft. On July 8, 1943, disaster struck again. Regal Ferdinand was moored at Constanța when Soviet aircraft conducted a surprise raid on the port. Multiple bombs struck the destroyer, causing severe damage. The ship caught fire and eventually sank at her moorings, settling on the harbor bottom. Some sources indicate the destroyer was later raised and repaired, possibly returning to limited service, though details remain unclear. The loss of both Regal Ferdinand-class destroyers within 2 years demonstrated the lethal environment in which Romanian naval forces operated. Soviet air superiority over the Black Sea made surface operations increasingly dangerous, and Romanian anti-aircraft capabilities proved insufficient to protect valuable ships. These destroyers, which should have been the pride of the Romanian fleet for years, were lost to air attack while still relatively young ships. Tragic waste of capable warships and trained crews. Mărăști class, Mărăști, Mărășești, and Mărășești. The 3 destroyers of the Mărăști class, Mărăști, Mărășești, and Mărășești, were older vessels acquired by Romania after World War I, providing additional destroyer strength through the interwar period and into World War II. These ships had originally been built in Italy during World War I as part of a class intended for the Italian Navy. After the war, Italy had surplus destroyers, and Romania acquired 3 examples between 1920 and 1927, providing experienced warships at reasonable cost. The vessels were named after significant battles from Romania's World War I experience, honoring the country's military heritage. These destroyers displaced approximately 1,400 tons, similar to the Regal Ferdinand class, with overall lengths around 93 meters. However, being World War I-era designs, they featured older systems and less capable armament. Propulsion consisted of steam turbines producing approximately 40,000 shaft horsepower, driving the ships to maximum speeds around 34 knots when new, though by World War II speeds were significantly reduced by age and wear. The main armament consisted of 4 102mm guns in single mounts, smaller caliber than the Regal Ferdinand class, and with less range and destructive power. Anti-aircraft armament was minimal, typically a few machine guns providing inadequate defense. Torpedo armament consisted of four 450mm tubes in twin mounts, smaller than standard 500mm weapons and less capable. The crew numbered approximately 140 to 160 officers and men. By World War II, these destroyers were over 20 years old and showing their age. Worn machinery required constant maintenance, obsolete equipment, limited combat effectiveness, and the lack of modern fire control systems and adequate anti-aircraft armament made them vulnerable. Despite these limitations, the Mărăști-class destroyers remained in active service throughout the war, conducting patrols, escorts, and supporting operations as needed. The ships operated primarily in coastal waters, where their limitations were less critical and air cover could be provided. Mărăști conducted various operations during 1941 and 1942, including convoy escort and coastal patrol missions. The destroyer survived numerous Soviet air attacks through luck and the skill of her crew in evasive maneuvering. However, the constant danger and wear from intensive operations degraded the ship's condition. On August 10, 1943, Mărăști was attacked by Soviet aircraft while operating near the Romanian coast. Multiple bomb hits struck the aging destroyer, causing catastrophic damage. The ship sank quickly, taking many crew members with her. The loss of Mărăști further reduced Romania's already diminished destroyer strength. Mărășești and Mărășești survived longer, continuing operations through 1943 and into 1944. These ships conducted mainly convoy escort and patrol missions, avoiding unnecessary risks to preserve the dwindling fleet. When Romania switched sides in August 1944, at least one of these destroyers remained operational and was used against German forces, though specific details of operations during this period are limited. After the war, the surviving destroyer or destroyers were in poor condition after years of intensive service. They were likely scrapped or turned over to Soviet control, ending careers that had spanned over 25 years of service. Submarines. Delfinul. Delfinul, meaning the dolphin, was Romania's first submarine, a vessel that represented the country's entry into underwater warfare and served throughout World War II, despite being obsolete by contemporary standards. Delfinul was built in Italy by the Quarnaro shipyard and delivered to Romania in 1931. The submarine was based on Italian design practice of the period, a relatively small coastal submarine intended for operations in enclosed waters like the Black Sea. Delfinul displaced approximately 650 tons surfaced and 900 tons submerged, with an overall length of about 68 meters and beam of 6 meters. These dimensions made it a medium-sized coastal submarine by contemporary standards. Propulsion consisted of 2 diesel engines for surface running, producing a combined 1,300 horsepower, driving the submarine to maximum surface speeds of approximately 14 knots. Submerged propulsion came from electric motors powered by batteries, providing about 900 horsepower and submerged speeds of 9 knots. Range was approximately 3,000 nautical miles surfaced and about 100 nautical miles submerged at slow speed, adequate for Black Sea operations. Armament consisted of 6 703mm torpedo tubes, 4 in the bow and 2 in the stern, with 8 torpedoes carried. This provided reasonable striking power for attacking enemy warships and merchant vessels. Additionally, Delfinul mounted a 102mm deck gun for surface engagements and anti-shipping operations, allowing the submarine to conserve torpedoes when attacking unarmed or lightly armed targets. Machine guns provided anti-aircraft defense when surfaced. The crew numbered approximately 45 officers and men, living and working in the cramped conditions typical of submarines of this era. When Romania entered the war, Delfinul was already 10 years old and showing signs of age. The submarine's relatively slow speed, limited dive depth, and obsolescent equipment made operations dangerous against a modern opponent like the Soviet Navy. Despite these limitations, Delfinul conducted numerous war patrols in the Black Sea, operating in Soviet-controlled waters and seeking targets of opportunity. Romanian submarine commanders and crews learned the dangerous art of submarine warfare through actual combat operations. Delfinul conducted attacks on Soviet shipping, achieving some successes in sinking or damaging vessels. However, the submarine also faced numerous depth charge attacks from Soviet anti-submarine forces, experiencing the terror of being hunted while submerged with explosions shaking the pressure hull. On several occasions, Delfinul survived near-miss depth charges that could have been fatal. The submarine's most significant achievement came in August 1941 when Delfinul torpedoed and sank the Soviet submarine SC-206 off the Crimean coast, a rare submarine versus submarine engagement that demonstrated Romanian capability. Throughout 1941 and 1942, Delfinul conducted regular patrols despite increasing mechanical problems from intensive operations and aging equipment. The submarine required frequent maintenance and repairs, straining Romanian repair facilities that lacked experience with submarine systems. By 1943, Delfinul's condition had deteriorated significantly, and the submarine was withdrawn from active patrols, relegated to training duties where it continued serving by preparing future submarine crews. When Romania switched sides in August 1944, Delfinul was likely still in service in some capacity. The submarine's fate after the war is uncertain, though it was probably scrapped or turned over to Soviet forces as war booty. Rechinul, meaning the shark, was Romania's second submarine, a larger and more capable vessel than Delfinul. Rechinul was also built in Italy, this time by the Cantieri Riuniti dell'Adriatico shipyard, and delivered to Romania in 1941, just as the war against the Soviet Union began. The submarine was based on more modern Italian designs, incorporating improvements over Delfinul. Rechinul displaced approximately 620 tons surfaced and 880 tons submerged, slightly smaller than Delfinul but with better performance. Overall length was about 70 meters with similar beam. Propulsion consisted of diesel engines producing approximately 1,500 horsepower surfaced and electric motors providing 800 horsepower submerged, giving surface speeds of 15 knots and submerged speeds of 8 knots. Range was similar to Delfinul at approximately 3,500 nautical miles surfaced. Armament consisted of 6 503mm torpedo tubes, 4 forward and 2 aft, with 10 torpedoes carried, more than Delfinul. The deck gun was a 100mm weapon similar to Delfinul's armament. The crew numbered approximately 45 officers and men. Rechinul entered service just as the war began and immediately commenced combat operations. The submarine conducted numerous patrols in Soviet-controlled waters, seeking Soviet shipping and naval vessels. Romanian submariners in Rechinul experienced all the dangers of submarine warfare: mechanical failures far from base, depth charge attacks that tested the pressure hull's integrity, the constant fear of mines, and the psychological stress of operating submerged for extended periods. Rechinul achieved several successful attacks on Soviet vessels, using its torpedoes and deck gun to sink or damage enemy ships. However, the dangerous nature of submarine operations and the increasing sophistication of Soviet anti-submarine defenses made each patrol more hazardous. On specific combat achievements and the ultimate fate of Rechinul, historical records are less clear than for other vessels. The submarine likely continued operations through 1942 and possibly into 1943, conducting regular patrols and contributing to Romanian naval operations. Whether Rechinul was lost to enemy action, mechanical failure, or survived the war remains subject to historical debate, with some sources suggesting the submarine was lost in 1942 or 1943, while others indicate it survived in some capacity. Marsuinul, meaning the porpoise, was Romania's third submarine, completing a small but significant submarine force. Like Rechinul, Marsuinul was built in Italy and delivered in 1941. The submarine specifications were similar to Rechinul, representing the same general design with minor variations. Displacement was approximately 620 tons surfaced and 880 tons submerged, with similar dimensions, propulsion, and armament to Rechinul. The crew numbered about 45 officers and men. Marsuinul conducted war patrols similar to the other Romanian submarines, operating in dangerous waters under constant threat. The submarine engaged Soviet shipping and conducted reconnaissance missions providing intelligence on Soviet naval movements. Like all submarines, Marsuinul experienced mechanical problems, the constant threat of depth charges, and the psychological strain of submarine warfare. The ultimate fate of Marsuinul, like Rechinul, remains somewhat unclear in historical records, with the submarine either being lost during the war or surviving in damaged condition until being scrapped or turned over to Soviet forces after Romania switched sides. Naluca-class motor torpedo boats. The Naluca-class motor torpedo boats represented Romania's most numerous fast attack craft, with approximately 12 to 16 vessels completed during the war years. These boats were designed and built in Romania at the Galați shipyard, representing indigenous naval construction capability despite Romania's limited industrial capacity. The Naluca class displaced approximately 45 to 50 tons fully loaded, making them true small craft designed for high-speed attack and quick escape. Overall length was about 25 meters, with beam around 4 meters, compact dimensions that allowed operation in coastal waters. Propulsion consisted of 3 gasoline engines, producing a combined 3,000 to 3,600 horsepower, driving the boats to maximum speeds of 45 knots or more, making them among the fastest craft in the Black Sea. The wooden or composite hull construction kept weight low while providing adequate strength for coastal operations. Armament varied between boats but typically included 2 450mm or 533mm torpedo tubes, allowing these small craft to threaten much larger warships. The torpedoes were typically launched from fixed tubes or launching rails on the deck. Additionally, the boats mounted several machine guns, usually 13.2mm weapons in single or twin mounts, providing anti-aircraft defense and capability for engaging light craft. Some boats could carry depth charges for anti-submarine operations. The crew numbered 10 to 15 officers and men, small enough to maintain tactical flexibility, but sufficient to operate all systems. Romanian motor torpedo boats conducted numerous operations throughout the war, attacking Soviet shipping, escorting convoys, conducting coastal patrols, and maintaining readiness for quick reaction strikes against Soviet naval forces. The boats' high speed and small size made them difficult targets, though their light construction meant even small caliber hits could inflict serious damage. Motor torpedo boat operations were conducted primarily at night or in poor visibility to maximize surprise and reduce vulnerability to detection. Romanian MTB crews became skilled at navigating in darkness, approaching targets silently at slow speed before opening throttles for attack runs, launching torpedoes, and then fleeing at maximum speed before enemy reaction could develop. These tactics achieved several successes against Soviet vessels, though many attacks failed when torpedoes missed or malfunctioned. The Naluca-class boats suffered losses from combat damage, accidents, and mechanical failures during intensive wartime operations. However, domestic construction meant replacement boats could be built, allowing the force to be maintained. After Romania switched sides, surviving motor torpedo boats continued operations, now against German vessels or in support of Soviet operations. German S-boats. Germany transferred several Schnellboot or S-boats to Romania during the war, supplementing Romanian motor torpedo boat strength with modern German fast attack craft. These S-boats were likely coastal variants, smaller than the famous E-boats that operated in the English Channel, but still capable vessels. Displacement was approximately 75 to 100 tons, with overall length around 32 meters. Propulsion consisted of 3 Daimler-Benz diesel engines, producing a combined 6,000 horsepower, driving the boats to speeds exceeding 40 knots. The diesel propulsion offered advantages over gasoline engines, including better range, reduced fire risk, and improved reliability. Armament included 2 583mm torpedo tubes, 20mm and 37mm cannons, and machine guns. The wooden hull construction was similar to Romanian boats. Romanian crews trained on these sophisticated craft with German assistance, learning German operational procedures and maintenance practices. The S-boats provided enhanced capability compared to indigenous boats, with better seakeeping, longer range, and more powerful armament. However, limited numbers meant their operational impact remained modest. After Romania switched sides, German S-boats in Romanian service became valuable additions to the Allied naval forces in the Black Sea. Italian MS boats. Italy transferred several MS boats to Romania, small fast attack craft representing Italian design philosophy. These boats displaced approximately 20 to 30 tons, even smaller than S-boats. Propulsion consisted of gasoline engines producing 2,000 to 3,000 horsepower, driving the boats to speeds of 40 to 45 knots. Armament included 2 450mm torpedo tubes and machine guns, The crew consisted of 8 to 12 men. Romanian MAS boats operated similarly to indigenous motor torpedo boats, conducting coastal patrols and attack missions. However, their Italian origin created maintenance challenges after Italy's September 1943 surrender disrupted spare parts supply. Mine layers and mine warfare vessels. Amiral Murgescu. Amiral Murgescu was a purpose-built mine layer that represented Romania's primary mine warfare capability. This vessel was built in Italy and delivered to Romania in the early 1930s, designed specifically for laying defensive and offensive minefields. Amiral Murgescu displaced approximately 1,240 tons fully loaded, with overall length around 78 meters. Propulsion consisted of diesel engines producing approximately 3,200 horsepower, giving a maximum speed of 18 knots, fast enough for mine-laying operations but slower than combat vessels. The ship could carry approximately 100 to 120 mines on rails running the length of the deck, with mines being rolled off the stern through gates in controlled sequences to create properly spaced minefields. Additionally, Amiral Murgescu mounted defensive armament, including several medium-caliber guns and anti-aircraft machine guns, allowing self-defense during operations. The crew numbered approximately 125 officers and men, including specialists trained in the complex procedures of mine warfare. Amiral Murgescu conducted extensive mine-laying operations throughout the war, creating defensive minefields protecting Romanian ports and coastal areas from Soviet naval incursions. The ship also laid offensive minefields in Soviet-controlled waters, attempting to deny areas to Soviet shipping and naval forces. Mine warfare proved highly effective in the confined waters of the Black Sea, where properly laid minefields could close strategic areas or channel enemy vessels into killing zones. Romanian mine warfare doctrine emphasized defensive operations protecting vital interests, with offensive operations conducted opportunistically when situations allowed. Amiral Murgescu survived the war period and continued in service after Romania switched sides, now laying mines to hamper German operations. After the war, the vessel likely continued in mine warfare roles or was retired and scrapped, though specific details of post-war service remain unclear. Minesweepers. Romania operated multiple minesweepers for clearing mines from Romanian waters and sweeping channels through enemy minefields. These vessels included purpose-built minesweepers and converted trawlers and fishing boats. Purpose-built minesweepers displaced 150 to 300 tons with wooden or non-magnetic construction, preventing them from triggering magnetic mines. Propulsion was diesel engines providing 12 to 16 knots. The crew numbered 20 to 40, trained in the dangerous work of mine clearance. Equipment included towed cables for cutting mine mooring wires, paravanes for controlling sweep depth, and detection gear for locating mines. Romanian minesweepers conducted essential missions, clearing channels for naval and merchant vessels, sweeping harbors after Soviet mining operations, surveying routes to ensure safe passage, and occasionally laying mines themselves. Mine clearance was among the war's most dangerous naval missions, as accidentally detonating a mine could sink the minesweeper instantly. Despite these dangers, Romanian minesweeper crews performed their duties throughout the war, maintaining navigable channels and protecting shipping. Gunboats and river monitors. Mihail Kogălnicianu. Mihail Kogălnicianu was a river monitor operating on the Danube, a shallow-draft armored vessel designed for riverine warfare. This monitor displaced approximately 680 tons with overall length around 62 meters. The shallow draft of about 1.5 meters allowed operation in the Danube's varying depths. Propulsion consisted of steam engines producing approximately 500 horsepower, giving speeds around 12 knots. Armament included 120mm guns, smaller caliber weapons, and machine guns. Armor protection for the hull and guns allowed the monitor to withstand fire from shore batteries and light weapons. The crew numbered approximately 100 to 120 officers and men. Mihail Kogălnicianu conducted operations on the Danube, supporting Romanian ground forces, bombarding enemy positions along the river, and protecting Romanian river traffic. When Romania switched sides, the monitor was used against German forces along the Danube during the final campaigns. The Romanian Navy of World War II was a small force that operated under constant threat in one of the war's more dangerous naval theaters. From modern destroyers that formed the fleet's backbone to submarines that prowled Soviet waters, from motor torpedo boats that raided enemy shipping to minesweepers that maintained navigable channels, Romanian warships fought a desperate defensive war against superior forces while supporting their nation's military objectives. The Navy's modest size reflected Romania's limited coastline and naval budget. But within these constraints, Romanian forces maintained credible capability. The destroyers provided striking power, competitive with similar vessels from other navies. Submarines demonstrated that Romania could conduct complex underwater operations. Motor torpedo boats showed indigenous design and construction capability, and mine warfare forces proved effective in their specialized missions. Romanian naval personnel demonstrated courage and professionalism throughout the war. Destroyer crews who fought their ships against air attack until overwhelmed. Submarine crews who penetrated enemy waters, knowing each patrol might be their last. Motor torpedo boat sailors who attacked superior forces in darkness, and minesweeper crews who cleared mines. Knowing one mistake meant instant death, all performed their duties with determination. The operational record shows both successes and tragedies. Romanian mine warfare effectively protected coastal waters and complicated Soviet operations. Submarine operations achieved several confirmed sinkings. Surface forces conducted successful convoy escorts and bombardment missions. However, the loss of 4 destroyers to air attack demonstrated the lethality of operating surface ships without air superiority. The vulnerability of Romanian vessels to Soviet air power shaped all operations and ultimately proved decisive. Romania's switch from Axis to Allied alignment in August 1944 created one of naval history's more unusual situations, with former enemies becoming allies overnight. Romanian sailors who had fought Soviets suddenly operated alongside them, a transition that proceeded remarkably smoothly given the circumstances. This demonstrated both Romanian professionalism and the pragmatic nature of military alliances. Today, no Romanian World War II naval vessels survive. The destroyers rest on the Black Sea floor, submarines vanished decades ago to unknown fates, motor torpedo boats were scrapped, and auxiliaries returned to civilian service or disposal. Only photographs, documents, and fading memories preserve the story of Romania's wartime fleet. Yet the story deserves remembrance for what it reveals about naval warfare's realities for secondary powers. Romania could not build battleships or aircraft carriers, but it could and did maintain a capable force appropriate to its needs and resources. The men who served in that force, from destroyer commanders to submarine captains, to motor torpedo boat crews, to minesweeper sailors, performed their duties with professionalism equal to any navy. The Romanian Navy of World War II operated in the shadow of larger forces and never achieved the fame of major fleet actions. But it successfully conducted operations throughout a brutal war, and that achievement merits recognition and respect.